How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to what is yet another episode of XYZ Live, and it promises to be one of the biggest episodes yet, does it not, my fellow co-host Dave?
Yes, it does. I am in the centre.
You are in the centre.
I am in the centre.
You are
of
not a
politics.
leftist. You are in the centre.
Yes, I think it's great to see right-wing parties just going towards that centre.
Hardcore at that centre.
It's where the power is. It's where the people are. It's where the votes are. Yeah.
Just ignore the 15% of people who don't want to vote for any major party now.
What are you talking about? You're a racist.
It's not an argument. I am your esteemed host, Matty Rose Live, here to discuss all the issues that we wish to discuss on this fine Monday evening. And if you're watching Q&A right now, get just a little bit gay. This week, we have someone, you just saw him laughing in the background. We have the chairman of the Australian Protectionist Party, who goes by the name of Bradley, and only Bradley. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Bradley, on this fine Monday evening.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm the West Australian chairman of the Australian Protectionist Party.
Fantastic. Not a problem at all.
Great to have you here. It's Bradley has written some really good articles, and we've put up some really good articles by the Australian Protectionist Party on the XYZ. Just really well written, well researched, just good, solid argument. It's been some really solid contributions. So it's great to actually have you on here as well. I know you've been bugging us for ages and ages, so thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks very much. We pride ourselves on being able to produce quality articles. That's what we want to do. We want to be able to, contribute an intellectual sort of case for the nationalist cause. So, we do a bit of that, and I make a contribution there myself. Yep.
Beautiful, beautiful. We'll start by asking a few questions about the Protectionist Party. Like, how long has the Australian Protectionist Party been around, and what do you stand for? What's your platform?
Well, we started back in 2007, so it's over a decade now. Doesn't time fly? We probably started, I think, because at the time it was there wasn't really much of a nationalist voice for Australian politics. It was sort of a case where One Nation had sort of had a bit of a flurry there in the late 1990s, and they'd sort of petered out a bit by about the mid-noughties. And Pauline Hanson, of course, had sort of come and gone from the party, I think, a number of times, and then she'd gone off and done Dancing with the Stars, and I think she even had a little stint in prison, and she'd sort of decided that she wasn't interested in politics anymore. And so I think it sort of reached a point where there was, not really much on offer as far as nationalist political parties were concerned. And there was kind of like the Australia First Party, but they also, that was originally started by Graham Campbell back in 1996. I myself was a member of that original Australia First Party. But Graham Campbell, I think, that party didn't really take off, and that was largely because of the, One Nation making such an impact in the late 90s, and then sort of Campbell decided to join forces with One Nation, and but the Australia First Party sort of kept on going, but they had some internal disputes there for a while, about probably 15 years ago. And it sort of reached a point where there was one character, I don't know how familiar you guys are with him, Jim Salem, that sort of muscled his way into becoming the leader of that particular party, and that caused a bit of discontent amongst some members, and so there was sort of a breaking off by some members, and alas, some of them started the Australian Protectionist Party in 2007. I myself would have been one of the first members to join in Western Australia. I was not originally on the executive of the party, but I became the West Australian chairman in 2013, so I've been at it now for over 5 years. Wow, doesn't time fly.
So is the party basically running on a ethno-nationalist platform?
Yeah, basically. We've always been what I call racially conscious or racially aware. I think we, wanted to bring that to the Australian political electoral environment. I think it was very much that. I mean, there was the original Australian Protectionist Party, which started, which was around like right back at the time of Federation. In fact, our very first Prime Ministers, Edmund Barton and Alfred Deakin, were both members of that original Australian Protectionist Party. So I think the idea was to basically bring back the spirit of the original Australian Protectionist Party with a similar sort of agenda, with racially conscious nationalism and also a support for trade protectionism, or at least some trade protectionism, as opposed to the sort of rabid free trade agenda that's sort of been embraced by the major parties nowadays.
That's an interesting one to go with, because there's becoming a real understanding that the system in which we're living, like, it's not really capitalism. Like, we live in a crony capitalist system.
That's correct, yeah.
So that when we talk about free trade isn't really free trade. Like, we're in like unfair trade deals.
Yep.
And so when we're criticizing the system that has been, we're not actually criticizing capitalism.
Yeah.
And and that criticism that we have of it, it can be demonized as sort of being, oh, well, you're just being socialist.
Or you're being anti-trade and all that kind of crap.
Yeah. But what we're actually talking about is actually, we want an actual free market. And if we're going to have trade deals, we want it to be on like an even footing with other countries.
Well, the situation we've got now is the business elite have essentially lobbied the government into making it possible for them to ship all our jobs offshore, and then they can import all the goods in cheaper and sell them cheaper and increase their profit margins at the expense of Australian workers. And then at the same time, they flood Australians with cheap labour anyway. So there's a difference between...
And then they tell us that that's capitalism.
And they tell us that that's I mean, that's not capitalism. Is property rights and trade absent force.
Yes.
So capitalism means I can trade with you, and the government doesn't tell us that we're not allowed to do that. And once we trade, that's your stuff, and it's no longer my stuff. Whatever you've traded with me is now my stuff. What we have now is a system where the government regulates our economy in order to... Well, they wouldn't outwardly say that it's in order to protect these big businesses and the profit margins of big businesses, but that's essentially what it's all about. They're about protecting the monopolies of those who control certain areas of the market. One big one is the gambling industry. So you'll notice in every major city, there's only ever one casino. Now, who do you think would be the biggest lobbyer against more casinos in the city? It would be that one casino. What happens is, if you ever try to get more casinos, you get a whole lot of people coming out, going, oh, we don't want to encourage gambling, blah, 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 all that kind of thing. And you don't be surprised if a lot of the people behind that are either funded by or encouraged by the casinos themselves. That's just one example. There's other examples. Like, the biggest one is the banks. So the banks aren't quite a monopoly. They're an oligopoly controlled by the central bank that is a monopoly. And all the banks own the central bank, and the banks are owned by a lot of people who aren't from Australia. That's a big rabbit hole you want to get into on another time. But ultimately, what we're in is not a capitalist system at all. It should be the role of the state, if they were actually doing their job, to protect the property rights of the people in a country. But our government is basically flaunting, or it's attacking the property rights of people in our country. It steals our money whenever we work, and it prevents us from doing business by putting in ridiculous licensing regimes, and then it allows foreign companies to just flood our market with cheap foreign goods and ultimately cheap foreign labor, and that is not good for our economy. It's not good for the Australian economy. It's good for the people that are foreigners coming in, but it's not, and it's good for the big businesses, but it's not good for Australians and our well-being and our livelihood and our economic livelihood especially.
Yeah, I think you've surmised that very, very well, Matty. Well done. I don't really...
Don't get a pat on the back?
That's why Matty's the XYZ star.
I do have an entire series on economics. You should go check it out. It's called the Economics series.
No, yeah, I have watched some of your videos on economics. You did a really good one recently on the housing bubble. You know, just fantastic work. Yeah, I really enjoy your work. So good on you.
Thanks, mate. But we're here to talk about the Protectionist Party. So tell us, what do you actually stand for? What's the main #1 goal of the Australian Protectionist Party? If you were in government tomorrow, what would you do?
I think probably one of the most important things that we would do would be we would bring in sovereign money reforms. That would be, you know, kind of like a radical reforming of the monetary system, basically, you know, to stop the system of private central banking, to do, you know, somewhat what Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary.
I can see why you wanted to remain anonymous.
Yeah, you know, you're not going to get too many other, you know, political activists talk about this sort of stuff, but that's sort of, you know, probably one of the foremost things that we'd like to see done, because, you know, once governments, you know, retake back power of the capacity to issue money, well, that's a major step in the massive step in the right direction. And it's fascinating because you know, Viktor Orban told the International Monetary Fund to get out of Hungary all those, you know, a few years ago now, and you know, since then the Hungarian economy has been absolutely booming. Unemployment's dropped from something like 11%, I read, to something like 4% or something. You know, it's like, yeah,
it's really interesting because I was actually listening to the ABC radio the other day, because I do this on a regular basis, because know thy enemy. And they were doing a series of features on different countries. They just after basically a whitewashing of Venezuelan socialism, they started focusing on Hungary, and they were talking about all the poor people, and they were talking about this movement called Momentum, and they were saying that they want to become a modern country, and that Viktor Orban is holding the country back, and what they really need are more immigrants, and that's the reason why they can't. The reason why they're all poor is because they don't have more immigrants. Yet you're telling me that their unemployment level has gone down from 11% to 4%. The ABC said nothing about this.
Of course they didn't.
That's amazing. Yeah, of course they didn't. You know, that's the figure that I read fairly recently. Yes. There's a major drop in the unemployment rate in Hungary, and also that they had something like the highest rate of real wages or something in the world. So people were doing, you know, really well. You know, Orban's reforms had made a major difference, and of course, you know, I think it was last year when he got re-elected by a big margin, and it was obvious that, you know, there's a lot of satisfaction with his regime there in Hungary. And you know, if the ABC was coming up with crap like that, well,
they were talking about the expanding difference between the rich and poor as well. They were trying to go that
also,
way. Yeah.
The ABC is basically communist propaganda at this point, so they're going to attack Hungary as much as they can, and they're going to suddenly forget about not real socialism Venezuela, which is now not real socialism, by the way. It's not real socialism anymore.
It was hilarious actually listening to the ABC, because they followed that up with a piece about Japan, about how they're trying to hold these parades to make Japanese people less prudish. I swear, like, in another 5 years, I'll be talking about trying to make Japanese boys cut their penises off. You know, that's always the agenda of it. It's crazy.
Yeah. They're really starting on Japan, because Japan's that big ethno-nationalist state, and it's also a high IQ state as well.
Yeah.
I actually read an article, speaking of IQ, I actually read an article that basically went over the race and IQ stuff and pointed out how a lot of it is incorrect. A lot of the assumptions are actually incorrect. And it is, in fact, white people that have the highest IQ with Japanese people. Yes. We actually do have the highest. And a lot of the reasons for the East Asian bump is just the way that they measured IQ in those tests and things like that.
Well, yeah, Vox Day is like... done a real critique of, like, the idea that another group of people are actually the most intelligent.
Oh yeah. Oh, we can't see who it is. Do we need to go to Specsavers to see who it is?
Possibly,
we might need to go to Specsavers to see who that is.
Yeah. He's basically just destroyed that theory. So it's quite interesting.
Sorry, I just got sidetracked a little bit anyway.
So the question I have then with the Australian Protectionist Party, like, you've got a great platform. So at the moment we've got Fraser Anning, who's basically going with a very similar platform to you. I can understand why, say, Fraser Anning is trying to set up a different party, say, to the Conservative Party, the Australian Conservatives, because the Australian Conservatives are basically what the Liberal Party should be, but they're still CivNat. One Nation, and we'll get onto them later, they started out as the ethno-nationalist party, but they're going towards that mythical centre and becoming CivNat. You've got the Liberal Democrats who are libertarian, and so you know they've got a combination of really good stuff, and they've got their own, interesting.
They went off the rails recently, though.
Yeah, exactly. But it seems to me like Australian Protectionist Party, like, you've got guys who've been fighting this fight for years. Like, do you see yourself as joining with Fraser Anning, because, like, he's the tip of the spear at the moment, who's really making some waves? Like, would you join forces, like, unite the parties, or would you, like, work with his party as a coalition?
Yeah, look, our agenda would absolutely be to. I mean, we're part of a coalition of Australian nationalists. There's us and a few other little groups, and certainly our entire modus operandi has always been to work with other like-minded organisations or other political parties, including the possibility of merging with them. I think you have to keep open to all possibilities. Certainly if Fraser Anning had sort of come to us and rather than starting, I mean, with these mainstream politicians, it's like they all want to start their own party nowadays. I mean, Fraser Anning's done it, Bob Katter's done it, and Corey Bernardi's done it, and Jackie Lambie's done it, Nick Xenobon's done it, and Clive Palmer's done it. It's sort of like, this seems to be the trend now. I'm a little bit, sort of more sceptical of the sort of one-person party type model. I don't really think that's ultimately, going to lead to a successful political movement in the longer term.
To me, it sounds like a house divided. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think it's. I can understand, of course, why they're doing it, and I can understand why people are attracted to that as well. It's sort of like, somebody's got a profile and everybody else wants to sort of, jump on the coattails sort of thing. But, it sort of works both ways. There's people that have the leadership and have the profile. They think that, because the party's named after them, that therefore, they should get their own way and everything, and they should be the central part of it. And, that it's like, that's kind of, I think, asking for trouble in one sense, because Darren Hinch was another one, by the way, and there was that woman recently who joined Darren Hinch's party, and she got elected, and as soon as she got elected, she broke off and went independent sort of thing. And it's like,
she'll have her own party in 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so I don't know. I mean, it would have been great if Fraser Anning, if he was looking to join an already established party, then if he had a word to us or something, looked at us. I mean, we'd love to talk to him. If he wants to talk to us, then we'd certainly love to talk to him. We'd certainly be open to any sort of possibilities like that.
I don't quite dislike the naming the political party after yourself thing in the short term.
Yep.
So I think it's all right for Fraser Anning, because Fraser Anning is now a brand. Yep. So I think it's actually okay.
He's distinct from all the other parties that we're
talking about. He is very distinct from all the others.
He's actually the guy putting out genuine ethno-nationalist talking points.
So I see the opportunity for him is, if he, for whatever reason, if he somehow manages to win his seat back and even potentially grow the party and the vote, he can then just morph it into the Conservative National Party and take it away from being focused more on Fraser Anning towards the policy. But right now, what he can do is just he can use his name to get attention. This is the day of social media. Everyone knows Fraser Anning. So if they go to the ballot box, they'll be like, oh, Fraser Anning, I like that guy. But they might not necessarily know the Conservative National Party. So it's an opportunity to get your foot in the door. You just have to then morph that into a genuine political party that actually does what political parties do and aren't focused on just one big personality. Because it is a big problem with all these big little independent parties coming up. It is a bit of a house divided at the moment. But what I think the whole thing is waiting for is for one group to snatch up that roughly 10% of the vote there. And I think Fraser Anning's got the best chance so far because he's expressing genuinely ethnic nationalist talking points. So he's able to actually differentiate himself from the other political parties enough that he could actually make a difference and he could actually take over what Pauline Hanson really should have taken over. Like, see, Pauline Hanson's polls have just dropped in two consecutive polls. Yeah. Her polling numbers, that is. I think Fraser Anning has a real opportunity. And if it's not Fraser Anning, it's going to be someone eventually. Eventually, someone is going to get into Parliament. They're going to be an all-out ethnic nationalist. And Fraser Anning's a really nice guy. So I think the opponents of him should probably be hoping that it's Fraser Anning who stays in there because the next one might not be as nice as Fraser. He might. So they should probably want Fraser Anning in there because Fraser Anning is a reasonable person. He's a nice person and they all smear him. But if he doesn't get in, then people who are behind him, there are a large number of people who support him. Hundreds of thousands, definitely hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million people who do genuinely support the guy, and a whole lot of other people who would vote for him if he was the leader of the Liberal Party. Let's not lie. So I think there is a big chance that he will get elected, but if he doesn't, then it'll be interesting to see who the next one talking about what he wants to talk about and talking about ethnic nationalism is going to be like. Because again, I don't think the lefties are going to be all too happy about that. They'll be even less happy about him. Yeah, they'll be saying in retrospect, Fraser Anning, at least he was a reasonable person. That's right. Yeah.
So look, we could use this as a segue to One Nation because they've just we had our concerns about them because Pauline Hanson had been the one who predicted all those years ago that we were going to get swamped by Asians. Yeah, and she went to jail for it, and she kept coming back, and she made a big comeback recently in a recent election, and like her party's been making waves. And then Fraser Anning, I know there was a bit of bad blood and he left, but he got up in Parliament and he basically said all the things that she's been saying, and he articulated it really, really well. And so he was someone backing her up, and she joined in with all the other establishment
chorus of condemnation.
The chorus of condemnation.
In the centre, she moved to the centre. Yeah. You've got to move to the centre if you want to win elections.
Yeah. And so then she put up the motion, it's okay to be white in Parliament. Brilliant, great troll. She did the burqa stunt, again, brilliant. She even managed to negotiate with the Liberal Party to get an inquiry into the ABC. I'm not sure if much has come of it, but it's something. But then Fraser Anning actually put the motion to Parliament to actually give the people a say on immigration, and she opposed that as well. And now after all this time, she at the last election, she was like, okay, Asian immigration isn't actually our problem. It's more Islamization. That's our biggest worry. But now she's actually put up a supposedly moderate Muslim candidate. Yeah. And it's like, okay, how far are you going to go? How many of your principles are you going to get let go? I know, even on XYZ, we've had people write articles saying Muslims should call out the extremes of Islam and all this sort of stuff. But we've also had lots of people saying Islam has no place in Australia.
That's right, and I don't think Islam has a place at all in Australia. Why doesn't Pauline Hanson come out and say that she wants to ban halal and kosher meat because it's cruelty to animals? She could say easily ban those things because they are cruelty to animals. But she puts up this moderate Muslim candidate for God knows what reason. Wasn't it? Someone was saying that it's probably Mark Latham getting in her ear, trying to get her to show her moderate credentials, which is electoral suicide. As the Liberal Party and the coalition have shown, if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. You've got to take a stand on a serious issue, and the demographic makeup and the ethnic makeup of Australia is a very serious issue to a lot of people, and a lot of people back her because she backed a predominantly European Anglo-Australia. Now she's basically betrayed her mandate as a political party, essentially. And I don't think that she deserves to remain as a political party if she's going to do things like that.
Well, the whole point of One Nation was that it was supposed to represent an alternative to the mainstream political parties.
Yeah.
But in trying to supposedly mainstream the party, she is basically taking away the reason for One Nation existing.
I think that's absolutely right. What you both said there is absolutely right. And this is one of the issues with what's known as sort of like mainstreaming. It's there's always like that sort of agenda to get elected, and then they just frequently compromise on principle for the sake of either gaining or maintaining power. And I guess that's where the Australian Protectionist Party has a little bit of a difference. I mean, we're not a mainstream political party, and we're not trying to be a mainstream political party. I guess our niche is that we are a nationalist party, that we are conviction-based political activists, that we fight for what we actually believe in. And we've been around since 2007, and we have some real staying power because we are fighting for what we believe in. So where exactly this goes for us, I mean, my view is that at some point in the future, I think my hope and my wish is that more and more people become more and more disillusioned with sort of like mainstream politics, and that they will increasingly be looking outside of the mainstream. And our party, Australian Protectionist Party, will be one of those parties. So it's not so much a matter of us trying to reach out and grab them, as it is more about them increasingly coming toward us, sort of thing. And also with the rise of the alternative media and the excellent work that people like yourselves do, and the Unshackled, and increasing alternative media sources, I think there's that real potential for growth in non-mainstream parties and nationalist parties like ourselves. I mean, all we can do is just keep putting ourselves out there, and what we offer is policies, philosophy, a social media presence. We just keep on plugging away, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, I think we're living in a time of radical social change, and I think that change is just going to get bigger and bigger. I think it's going to happen faster and faster. I think the next 10 years are going to see something very radical happen, right throughout the Western world, and where exactly it leads us, as we shall see. But we'll just continue to play our role and try and act as something of a pivot role in Australian politics, and try and help to shift the consciousness and shift the culture, and try and wake people up and red pill people, and show people that there's a better way of doing things, rather than the current direction that Australia's going in. I mean, I believe that Australia is basically being dominated, or the agenda that's dominant in Australia now is sort of like the liberal global internationalist order, and there's a dominance of liberal progressive type values, with the influence of cultural Marxism and radical feminism and homo-fascism and all sorts of agendas there that and what we're trying to offer is a counter to that. We're trying to swing the pendulum increasingly in a nationalist and protectionist direction, and we'll keep doing what we do, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and I think as people wake up to what's going on in the world and in Australia, it's a truth that the mainstream media have been hiding from them. People are going to get, first of all, interested, and then angry. But I don't think people are going to wake up until there's a real economic crash. I've said this before on the live stream. right now the economy is going on as a zombie economy. So people are just able to go to work and then go home. They're not able to get ahead, but they can still go to work and still get a paycheck. That's all built on a economic house of cards known as Ponzi finance, which could go out from underneath the economy at any time, essentially. And it looks like the housing bubble may have popped. The slide just continues and continues and continues. It'd be interesting to see what happens if it does go to the 70% drop, and whether or not that actually does break the banks and they end up having to bail people in. But I don't think anyone, or the mainstream of Australian people, that is like normies, are going to be fully woken up until they really feel the economic pain. And right now, because it's chugging along, they are able to pay the bills essentially. But if that was to change and people were to start look up and ask the question, wait a minute, what the hell just went wrong there? You might find that they're going to be pretty pissed off with the mainstream parties. And this is what you see in France right now, where the people voted for Macaroni because they thought he was an outsider. He marketed himself as an outsider, but he's not an outsider. He is essentially a globalist banker who's been parachuted into the position of French president, and the French people woke up to that. But what happened is, like, you see, revolutions get started over taxes. Revolutions get started over economic problems. The French people are struggling economically. Meanwhile, the French government just keep bringing in people from, especially Northern Africa, and giving them welfare. So
and soccer roles
and they give them all their positions in the soccer, the football World Cup team. Yeah, it's going to take something like that for people to really wake up. But in the meantime, what we can do is continue to just speak loudly and proudly about where our values are and be openly intolerant of people who are against those values. And when it comes to One Nation, they have just violated quite egregiously a lot of the values of nationalist Australia. So I don't think they deserve any votes at the next election. They'll probably get a few just based on Pauline Hanson's name. But personally, I think if you are a reasonable nationalist, you should consider moving your vote to Fraser Anning, or even Australian Conservatives who have an okay immigration policy. At least it's a step in the right direction. Just someone like that who are going to stick up genuinely for Australian values and aren't going to sell them out for, let's vote for the centre, we have to win the centre. You know what I mean?
It's another feature of.
I've got to go and get a drink of water. My throat's very scratchy. You keep talking.
Yeah. So one of the features of this move to the mythical centre is that political parties on the right seem to think that we need to have somebody whose identity blows the left's mind put up our ideas. So, like, Milo Yiannopoulos, hey, he's a gay guy who has married a black man. He's a gay Jew who's married a black man. And he's not supposed to believe in the things that he believes. And so he breaks the narrative. And so we use him to put across, like pretty, like, he's kind of like the attack dog, and he can get away with it because his identity protects him to a certain extent. But at the same time, like, the left hate him because he breaks the narrative.
Did that just freak everyone out? Do you think that I've got like another door in my room and stuff because I left on that?
You just
side
went to another
on
dimension.
that side?
Yeah, you've just been having some of those that. Sell your side. What's that? No,
it was a quantum leap.
Yeah, it was a quantum leap. And so with Emma Eros, she's basically a cover Muslim. It's like all of a sudden, hey, we're allowed to talk about halal and the burqa and Sharia law because, hey, we've got a Muslim who's up there saying it for us.
Yeah.
The thing for me is, like, can we just have milk that tastes like real milk? Can we just have white men stand up and speak up for white men? Like, I would actually love it if Fraser Anning said, you know what, I don't want any women running as in any political positions. I just want men.
Yeah.
I just want white men, because men should be the guys in leadership, and we are standing up for white Australians. We're standing up for real Australians. We don't need a token black person or a token gay person or a token woman to get up and say these things, because we're worried that if we get up there and say it, people are just going to dismiss us on the basis that we're white men. Like, the whole point of like us trying to take back the culture is that the culture that we're in now like makes white men the bottom of everything. We are the butt of every joke, and we are the ones who are supposed to pay for everybody at the same time. And we're the ones that they're literally trying to get rid of and genocide.
Yeah.
So stop cucking. Like, even
stand up for white blokes.
Yeah. Like,
just say we are unashamedly here for the white man.
Yeah, that's it.
Because white men built civilization, and we want to defend our civilization. So we are going to, by extension, stand up for the white man and do what white men want.
That's it. And the flip side of this, and I talked about it in the article which I wrote last week, which is actually going to get reposted on the Pickering Post. I can see the flip side of it, because like for someone who's gay, like Milo Yiannopoulos, for someone like Emma Eros, these people, they understand that here in the West, this is the best that it's ever going to get.
Yep.
And they see a lot of white people going around basically destroying what the good things about Australia that made them, and about the West that make it a good place for them to live in. But at the same time, the problem is, because like there is such a push to the left from outside forces, and because like white people have been so cut and are just helping to push it all along, that's spurring a reaction, and that reaction is going to make things like they were in the old times, when, say, a Muslim woman or a gay man would not be that welcome in the West.
Yep.
And so they're trying to maintain that balance that has existed for maybe the last few decades, where it's actually been a really good place for people like them to live in.
Yeah.
But the problem is that that balance is not a balance. It's completely artificial.
Yeah.
Like someone like Emma Eros, her parents were only let in because Marxists changed the immigration policy of Australia. So if we take down Marxism, their position in Australia is going to become very shaky.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I can understand why they, like someone like Emma Eros, and like a few other people who are of like, they're not real Australians, but they're trying to make waves in the Australian patriot community and conservative movement and nationalist community, why they want to sort of prevent it from going all the way. But the problem is, what makes it Australia good for them is not sustainable. Yeah. And it's artificial. It's not going to last.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, well, what makes Australia and the West the best is the fact that it's a culture emanating from what is essentially the genetics of the white man.
Yes.
And you can't change that just by saying, oh, look, we can just bring everyone in and they can all share our values. No, it doesn't. It's proven untrue. Like, you go...
They can come in, they can share in the fruits of our values.
They can share in the fruits of our values, but they can't share our values. And if you have a look, even over in America, you look at the polling data or the voting data based on race. Unfortunately, they don't keep it in Australia because we're too politically correct and it would show the truth. But you look at it in America, and even East Asians vote overwhelmingly for the Democrats.
Yeah, really.
And I would imagine it's probably, I don't know if it would be similar here because our Liberal Party are actually so left-wing all anyway, but I can see that there would be a lot of people who aren't quite Australians that would, like you said, try to get into the nationalist community to perhaps move it in the direction that they want. But yeah, it's not sustainable because it doesn't hit the core of what makes Australia and what makes the West great. And that is the culture that emanates from the white man's genetics. Yeah. Ultimately, it's obviously it's individual choice and all that kind of thing, but white men are viciously independent and viciously individualistic, and that's what's been exploited by our culture and how it's been subverted so easily. We haven't been able to have that. You know, when we did get that racial collective kind of spirit, it was probably misguided and went in the wrong direction, and it ended up overreacting in a way that it probably shouldn't have. And then now, because of our tendency towards empathy, it's made us feel guilty towards going back to there and trying that again, but in a much more positive and more moral way, like a way that doesn't impose for the violence of the state onto the people that it's supposedly trying to protect. Like, what you want is a situation that understands the truth of the matter whilst also protecting the rights of the people within it. This is why proprietarianism is actually so good, because proprietarianism treats the ethnic makeup of a nation as the property of that nation, and it is the job of the government to protect the property of the nation and the property of the individuals within the nation. So the proprietarianism actually solves all of the problems inherent with libertarianism. So it prevents open borders and all that kind of thing, whilst also, like, without imposing unduly on the individuals within it, and without creating an overbearing and tyrannical state. So it's an excellent system.
Does it also prevent you from having to endure really annoying conversations with libertarians who are convinced that because they're a libertarian, they're smarter than you?
No.
Yeah.
No, that'll never happen, because we are smarter than everyone. That's a joke. But it's like it's born out of proprietarianism, but it's not quite proprietarian. It's not quite. It's born out of libertarianism, but it's not quite libertarianism. It takes the good bits of libertarianism and enhances it. What it does is it takes the good things of Western civilization and protects the good things of Western civilization and prevents parasitism. It 100% prevents parasitism, thus prevents communism. So it's a really good little system, and it's something that we could implement over a long period, and hopefully we can work towards that over in the next few decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well said, Matthew. I think you're right there about white men and the white European race is, I think basically what I call the backbone of Australia. It's the pillar of Australia. I mean, it's not to say that there haven't been some very significant contributions from non-white peoples in Australia, because of course there has been. But I think when it comes down to it, white European people and our collective DNA is absolutely the backbone of what Australia is. But this is something that's unfortunately not very well understood now in our society, because of all the politically correct brainwashing and the racial ignorance that's sort of like grown over the decades, and this tendency to believe that race is somehow but a trivial factor in the human drama, when in reality race is a very profound factor in the human drama. And this is something that racially conscious nationalists understand, but it's something that the masses at this stage, with all the politically correct cultural Marxist sort of brainwashing, they're sort of in the dark about. But that consciousness is changing, it's shifting. We're waking people up, and we'll continue to wake people up. But I think that your comments, Matty, about an economic downturn will sort of really shift things in our favour. I think that's absolutely true. I think there's also other factors in the future that will shift things in our favour as well. I think one will be technological advancement. I think we're sort of on the verge of a sort of an automation revolution. Increasingly, more and more jobs are going to be performed by machines, and then increasingly by artificial intelligence. And it probably won't be too long before we end up with driverless cars. I mean, there's already driverless trains and this sort of thing happening. And I think that once that starts to come in more and more, I think there will be less of a demand from the big business community for cheap foreign labour. If you can just use, it's cheaper to produce machines to do the labour for you, then you don't need to bring in all these Indian taxi drivers or these workers from the Philippines, wherever. I think that's something that will work in our favour. So we'll see what happens there, but I think that's one thing that will work in our favour. But also, it's just a general shift in consciousness that I think is occurring right throughout the Western world. I think it's it is, you know, somewhat similar to the counterculture revolution that happened back in the 1960s. Only it's almost like a revolution occurring in reverse, rather than sort of like bringing in liberal progressive type values that sort of, you know, came into ascendancy during that 60s counterculture revolution. You sort of like had the rise of feminism, you had the rise of radical environmentalism, you had the sexual revolution, you had the civil rights movement in the US, you had the, you know, abolition of the white Australia policy, and the, you know, sort of like this belief that, you know, we humans are all kind of like a blank slate, when, you know, increasingly, you know, science is coming to the fore and showing us that, you know, we're not born with a blank slate at all. Our DNA is incredibly powerful. And, you know, gender differences are very significant. Racial differences are very significant. And, you know, as we move on and make more and more progress with regard to scientific advancement and scientific knowledge, you know, more and more people, I think, are going to realise the truth about these things, that we're not born with a blank slate. That's, you know, the theory of egalitarianism, you know, it might sound good, it might read good, it might feel good, and it might spin good, but it's not actually true. And, you know, at some point you have to kind of like, you know, face reality, you have to accept reality. There are consequences from not facing reality. I really love that quote by Ayn Rand when she said that you can deny reality, but you can't evade the consequences of denying reality.
Ayn Rand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wonderful quote. It's a wonderful quote.
Actually, I like Ayn Rand. A couple of things. Well, one thing I just wanted to mention there, you said that it's a lot like the 1960s in now, in that we're sort of creating a counter revolution to that. I've mentioned it before again on the stream. I think what is happening now is, yeah, it's essentially just the counter to that, and we're starting that now, and we are at the start of that. What's interesting about the situation at the moment is it's similar to a lot of different parts in history. It's actually much more similar to when the printing press was first invented, except the changes in that happened over 100 odd years, or 100, 200 years. And now the changes are happening in 20 years. So you're getting all this change from the printing press, but it's really, really condensed into a small period of time. And what happened with the printing press was the current ruling class of the day were ultimately made not the ruling class. And this is probably what scares the current ruling class so much, because new tech, alt tech, and the internet really threatens their hegemony over the narrative, because narrative is so important, and the way you frame events and the way you put into the words you put out there into the world shapes the way people see the world. And what you have with the internet is essentially a decentralization of how our national narrative is framed. And it's one that's heading a lot more towards the truth. It's funny because the mainstream media and the establishment and the rulers constantly talking about fake news when it's actually them who produce all the fake news. That's just a backlash. And they say, oh, look at all this fake news and look at that fake news, whatever. That's all a big backlash against the fact that they are losing influence and control over the minds of the masses. So what we're seeing now is ultimately a revolution of sorts. It's an information revolution, but it's almost like a great awakening of the human consciousness.
Yep.
Where people are waking up all the time to the amount of bullcrap that we've been fed for decades, actually centuries, with the bullcrap we've been fed, but decades, especially since the 1960s, because that was when this cultural Marxist, far left, revolutionary socialist nonsense all started taking over, and then they eventually took over by the 70s, and they've been pushing it ever since, and just, you know, slowly changing the culture. It was like Fraser Anning's article on XYZ, how he said, oh, it was actually the liberals who refused to talk about it. I just want to mention one thing before we move on, before I say, it's Kevin Rudd had this essay, and I actually read the whole essay.
Thing, yeah.
Oh my God, he's a windbag.
He's actually Yeah.
He actually did a recording of it as well. He's got it on SoundCloud. Oh, he just
that voice.
Oh, hello, I'm Kevin Rudd, and I'm just amazeballs.
That's pretty much how he sounds.
Listen to me because I'm Kevin Rudd.
I can't believe
he's done that for 30 minutes. I'm Kevin Rudd over and over again. And it would have been the same level of intellectual bullshit.
He's actually called for the ABC to be more biased towards the left.
Yeah, and he's saying, "Oh, the ABC is independent." He must have slammed the Murdoch press there.
Yeah,
well, he slammed the Murdoch press so much.
You could see him use. You can see that, like, he'll never forgive Australia, let alone the media, for like kicking him out after he got elected as prime minister. Like he thought that was his birthright.
Yeah,
he thought he should have been prime minister for 10 years,
forever.
Yeah,
he should have been PM for life.
So yeah, you could see him projecting about the Murdoch press. You could see him projecting, like, I think he used the term psychosis. To refer to, like, people who disagree with him or something on something.
Oh, it was horrendous. I read the whole thing. I actually read the whole thing.
He was stating that the ABC actually should be a left-wing organisation.
Yeah, because the Murdoch press is far right. And he's
the
talking about
Murdoch press.
This is what I wanted to talk about. It was he was saying that, oh, it's the coalition who have always opposed. The coalition have always opposed. They only ever oppose. That is completely the opposite of the truth. They are controlled fake opposition.
Yes.
They don't oppose. They pretend to oppose and then just capitulate. They never fight for anything. Oh, but the Labor Party always try and nation build, and it's the left, it's the coalition that always try and oppose the good things that we do. But it's that kind of attitude. It's that ridiculous attitude that we need to fight. We need to say, we will actually show you what real opposition looks like.
Yeah, it's part of their narrative.
Yeah,
like to set up the Liberal Party as the
framing of the narrative.
Yeah.
So once again, Matty, I think you've absolutely nailed it there. I think that's
we should have you on every week. you just nailed it. Yeah, way more supportive than Dave.
All I do is tell Matty that he's fat and that he should stop farting.
It's mean. He's so mean to me all the time off camera. He beats me.
It's true.
No, I think you've just nailed it again there, Matty, about, with regard to the Liberal Party. And I think this is something that's, frustrating so many people on the sort of broader right. Just the view that, the Liberal Party has not really provided much of any real opposition to the sort of progressive left, green left sort of agenda. It's just, I mean, they make out that they're opposition, but in reality, once the progressive left makes gains in the culture war, once they've sort of, pushed the battle lines in a leftward direction, the so-called, sort of mainstream conservative, and this isn't just true in Australia, it's also true overseas as well. But it's like, the conservatives are just like trying to hold the line sort of thing. They don't actually go on the attack and drive in the opposite direction themselves. They don't take back many of the gains that have actually been made by the progressive left. And this is where I think nationalists are different. We're in the sort of like dissident right, we're not the mainstream right, we're the dissident right. And, we are absolutely, I think, we are the ones who will take the fight up to the left. We want to reverse many of the gains that have been made by the cultural Marxists, by, the radical, rabid, sort of ultra progressive left. And this is another thing about political correctness. The other thing that a lot of people, I think, maybe don't quite understand about political correctness, but this is how I describe it. I mean, political correctness is not actually static. It's effectively fluid. And it's like, once the progressive left make some kind of gain in the culture war, it's like they never know when to stop trying to push things in an increasingly progressive direction.
It's their pattern that they always overreach, and eventually there's going to be a reaction.
Overreach is exactly what they're doing. And it's like they've just become increasingly insane, increasingly deranged, increasingly, the agenda just becomes more extreme, also more authoritarian as well. It's like they're trying to, ram those progressive values down everybody else's neck. They're trying to brainwash our children more and more with those values. And it just reaches a point where, more and more of the normies are kind of like waking up and realizing we can't keep going in that direction. We need,
and then it's helicopter time.
Yeah, we need to turn the vehicle around.
Maybe easier.
We need to turn the vehicle around and go back in the other direction, because we've, as you said, completely overreached in the culture war, and we need to go back the other way. And that's absolutely what Australian Protectionist Party is about. They're about trying to swing the social pendulum in the opposite direction, because we're not going in the right direction at the moment. That's for sure. We're not heading on the road to paradise. We're effectively heading on the road to hell. That's where the liberal global internationalist order is taking us. And we need to absolutely fight back and push back hard against that. We need to go the other way. We need to return and restore to the sort of values that were sort of like more dominant in Australia back in the early part of the 20th century, as opposed to the values that are dominant today. The dominant values today are just,
I like the idea of a restoration. Like we use the term revolution, but I like the idea of restoration of the spirit of the original Australian Protectionist Party, a restoration of the real values on which Australia was actually built. And when I say values, I'm talking about it was built as a homeland for the British people. And it was a homeland for European people in the Antipodes. That's what it was about.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Australia was, when it was founded, it was kind of perceived as being a new Britannia in the South Seas. That's what they sort of called it. And if you look back at the sort of the early literature, it's often the references to Australians being British, and it's I can remember there was some Aboriginal activist back in the 1930s who was demanding the right for the Aborigines to be perceived as fully British, and it's like that's how it was sort of like perceived at the time. Now obviously it's changed and evolved and moved since then, but there was absolutely that was the sort of like the early spirit of early 20th century Australia. But now it's like the Anglo-Celts remain the dominant people in Australia, but not for much longer at the rate we're going. And that's very, very concerning.
Yep. All right. So we're just going to move on to the next step. I forgot to tell everyone at the start. You'll notice in the title, we've got a very special guest coming right now. And that very special guest is actually everyone's favourite character on my main channel, Short Bus.
Do you have the hat?
I don't have. No, it's not me. It's Short Bus. No, it's Short Bus. And he's going to come because we've received. Oh, there he is. Oh, should we? So anyway,
this guy.
Here he is. So everyone saw my Patriots video where I basically given a lot of crap to Mr. Peter Grace, who we now know is a fairly D-grade radio personality. I wouldn't call him a star. I don't know. I think he was on Triple R. I think it was Triple R. I don't know.
Yeah, you're not a radio star.
You're not a radio star if you're on AM radio or Triple R.
I think more people listen to XYZ than Triple R.
Probably.
Yeah.
You can call yourself a star if maybe you're on like Triple M.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Or Fox.
Yeah. Either way.
Or Nova.
Either way, you're still going to regret that haircut. But
it's a terrible haircut.
And those sunglasses.
But anyway, he's a radio star by day and a Captain Potato by night.
I prefer to call him Captain Incontinence.
That's mean. That's fake news. You know that.
Apparently, it's fake news.
Apparently, it is fake news.
I reckon he would not have denied it so vigorously if there wasn't some truth to the
Thou doth protesteth too much, yes, almost.
Yeah.
Thou doth protesteth too much. I don't know. Who knows? But I was trolling his Facebook page with my fake account.
The bedwetting Bolshevik.
Yeah, I called him Pissing Pete. And he didn't like that. And I called him a failed radio star after he told me exactly who he was, who I didn't know.
Yeah, so you have basically baited him into actually confirming.
And then he comes out and he's just written this massive rant. So I've got a very special guest to read the rant to us. It's everyone's favourite character on my show.
Oh, why? Who's this? Who's this disappearing right now?
Hey, mate, come in now. Is it my turn now? Yeah, Short Bus, come on in. I've never been on the live stream before.
Say hello to Short Bus, everybody.
Hey, say hi to Short Bus, everyone. Hey, guys, this is amazing. I can't believe I'm actually on a live show. You guys are all amazing. Oh, I'd like to thank Dave. I'd like to thank Matty.
Don't want to thank Nix or Trenny Metalina. They're annoying as hell. Anyway, let's read it.
This is a long letter.
Everyone,
do you think you can get through this?
I've been working on my reading quite a lot. Matty said that I could actually read it, okay? It's going to be hard, but my teacher... Oh, I'm so excited. Anyway, I'm so excited today.
Are you going to read the whole thing, Short Bus? It's very long. Can everybody see this big, long thing?
It's very long. It's much longer than Grug. I'm used to Grug. Anyway, okay, here we go. This is amazing. In case you missed this from the other post, Matty, Fig Jam Rose. What does Fig Jam mean?
It means if I'm good, just ask me.
Oh, that's stupid. What an idiot. It's projection as well. Is that what it is?
I think that's projection.
Just a little. You're right, Short Bus. That is projection. Anyway, keep reading. You're doing well. Okay.
I'm just an old bloke taking the piss out of idiots.
Well, he's definitely an old bloke. Do we have the? We've shown the before photo. Do we have the after photo?
I don't know if we have the after photo ready.
Yeah, don't worry.
Do we have the after photo ready, Matty?
He looks like one of those wraiths from Lord of the Rings.
He does look very old, doesn't he?
He's just,
It's also funny that he thinks just saying, "Oh my God, you're dumb. You're so dumb, everyone." Is that taking the piss? No, that's just being a dick, really. Just being lame.
Yeah, he's just
being old and angry.
His humor is basically single entendre.
Yeah,
it's just like he makes up names for people.
White supremacist bullheads.
Yeah,
you're an idiot.
He said that.
I so he called you an idiot.
You're an idiot.
You're an idiot. I guess
I'm stupid, and I know I'm smarter than he is.
Come on, Short Bus. You're not stupid. You're just a little bit special. That's all.
Thanks, Matty.
Keep reading.
Okay. So far, you've been unable, to prove you're not. You're a very confident idiot, very self-assured. Oh,
that's actually quite nice of him, isn't it?
Hey, shut up, Matty. I'm trying to read. I sense a bit of a chemical imbalance as well as an overabundance of self-esteem.
He said that twice now.
To a level that illustrates the Dunning-Kruger effect. Doesn't Dunning-Kruger supposed to have a dash in the middle there?
Yes, you're
Maybe
right.
Maybe he should learn how to read and write before casting stones.
I think that's projection in real time there.
It is projection in real. Well spotted, Short Bus. Well spotted. I can't believe you actually spotted that. That's actually very. You've got a very good teacher.
Thanks again. I've been learning.
Yeah.
Okay. You're the kind of idiot who thinks an idiot is somebody who doesn't know something you just found out. What does that mean?
It doesn't make any sense, Short Bus.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
It doesn't.
Hold on, I'll read it. Yeah. You're the kind of idiot who thinks an idiot is somebody who doesn't know something you just found out.
Like this is that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like that's not a sentence. Like I'm not even a real editor, but I would just delete that.
Yeah, he probably should have just edited that out.
Yeah.
Because
these are very long paragraphs as well. It's like, look at that second one. Like, how are you supposed to make any sense of that?
Yeah, it's pretty terribly written, actually.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to keep reading. You remind me of the old socialists. What's a socialist?
A socialist is an idiot.
Oh, yeah, okay. Is that like Sally McManus? Yeah. She looks like a man. You remind me of the old socialists I met in the 60s who used to bang on about the revolution the way you bang on about white genocide.
Okay, now this is actually interesting. This is the one moment of semi-interest in this entire long spread. You can tell he's triggered, like just because he's just written this really long.
It is very triggered, isn't it? It's extremely triggered. I wish I'd put my laugh emoji at the end there. I think I did actually laugh at it in the end.
So he's basically using the "I'm older than you" fallacy. Like it's the what's the fallacy where you appeal to authority?
an argument for authority.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of that in there, but he's also he's also wrong, because the thing about socialism, the thing about communism, is what we've been talking about, like all this live stream. There are two strands of socialism, of communism, socialism, whatever you want to call it. There was the socialism where they're like, right, let's have a revolution, let's take over a country, let's spread international communism throughout the world. And there was the Gramsci cultural Marxist Frankfurt School approach of, let's infiltrate society, let's take hold of the key institutions, make a march through the institutions. And this is the society in which we live right now is a result of that slow march of socialism. So yes, the revolution did come as planned over the course of decades. And the reason that Bradley has to remain anonymous and use his first name, because he wants to talk about central banking, is an exact, and the fact that so many contributors to XYZ have tried to keep their identity anonymous is a great example of just how effective cultural Marxism has been. So for starters, he's wrong on that. And then when we talk about white genocide, like, you can actually look at the figures.
The stats are very clear.
Yes.
That whites are being demographically replaced in our own countries.
Yes.
And the elites are saying that they're going to do it.
Yes.
They're all on record.
Yes.
So I've noticed here, he actually calls it a conspiracy theory. You can't just call something a conspiracy theory because you don't like what they're saying.
Yes.
You have to actually prove to those people that it is a conspiracy theory. It's like when you're talking about flat Earth.
Yeah.
Someone puts forward a theory. They say that they believe in the flat Earth, and they put their evidence forward, and then you have to turn around and say, well, no, that's actually not true, because this is we can see, you go up high, you can see further over the horizon, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
You're forgetting the first rule of flat Earth theory.
What?
Never argue with the flat Earth.
Oh, that's true. But you know what I mean. You understand what I mean.
Yeah.
If you're trying to actually win a debate or convince the people who are actually listening to them, who might be on the fence or whatever it is. And even then, like, say it's a UFO conspiracy theory, you can point out and say, well, there's actually no evidence to prove that. But there actually is evidence to show that white genocide is happening. I mean, have a look at South Africa. South Africa is the perfect example of what happens when whites become minorities in the countries that they created. And for him to turn around and say, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory, he hasn't thought about it. Like, he obviously doesn't think about what he's...
Can I have my going back, please?
Shut up, Short Bus.
In the words of Stefan Molyneux, it's not an argument.
That is not an argument.
Yeah.
Anyway, Short Bus, we'll get you to just skip the rest of that long-winded paragraph and go from the next one.
Okay. You've proved yourself to be too juvenile to be called immature.
Again, that does not make sense.
And too full of yourself to accept that anybody who disagrees with you could possibly be more knowledgeable than you.
You see, that's really silly, because I would imagine that Jordan Peterson disagrees with me on a hell of a lot, and he's way smarter than I am. So, I mean, it's just him throwing out rubbish.
Yes, it's projection as well, because
Projection,
again, his whole shtick is to make up names for people and say, oh, this person's an idiot.
Oh, yeah,
And like, his form of arguing is to repeat the words that like the key terms that we talk about, and say them in a derisive manner.
I was like, oh, what a racist dickhead.
Yeah.
That's dumb. You're dumb.
They talk about cultural Marxism.
That's so dumb. Exactly. Anyway.
It's a level of arrogance only idiots can achieve.
More projection.
He just keeps repeating himself.
Exactly. Over it. He's very upset. You can tell that he's so upset. It's hilarious.
It's so long. And it's so badly written. It's beautiful. This is seriously like every now and then, like over the 3.5 years here at XYZ, like I just have beautiful moments that really just make it all worth it. Like, if we die, if white people die and like cast into the night, this is going to be like one of those beautiful moments along the way.
It'll be there. Oh, remember that time we triggered Potato Pete into one of the dumbest rants?
And I'll be like,
yeah,
I remember that. That was pretty cool.
That was hilarious. It was so funny. Anyway.
You seem to think that if you're the first person in an exchange to say triggered, that makes you the winner of something, when your video response to me was pretty succinct definition of the word triggered in
Use
the
a comma.
reply it what?
What? Okay, wait. So because someone replies to you and makes fun of you, that makes them triggered? No, it doesn't work like that.
He also thinks,
retard.
He also thinks that he thinks that if he's the first person to call the other person a Nazi, then that means he wins.
I know.
The other person
It's just all projection all the way through, and it's hilarious. And the thing is, no, triggered is what you say when you piss someone off.
Yeah.
And you're clearly pissed off.
Yeah,
all of your videos are pissed off.
He's clearly pissed off because are there any commas in there? My eyesight is terrible.
I don't think there are. There's no. Or there was. Have a look, and then you see after the exclamation mark, no capital letter.
But then, like, there are several lines with no comma. Come on, man.
Yeah, and that's a really. Oh, is that a long sentence? Oh no, because it's 2 sentences. Anyway,
it's amazing.
This is my favorite bit. Anyway,
okay.
Can you read it away, short bus?
You even rushed to create a fake Facebook page just so you could hurl your blip in the comments on the Patriots page like a triggered monkey.
Wow, that's really self-centered there.
Did he say monkey?
Yeah, he did. Bit racist.
Yeah,
too.
we should
wow.
record him.
Racist. Yeah. What a racist.
Yeah.
How we should just call him Peter Fig Jam, right? Peter Fig Jam Grace. What do you reckon? He thinks that I made a Facebook page just to comment on his page.
Yeah, you've had that thing, right?
That was ages. Yeah, I know. It's like, come on, mate. Who do you think you are? It was there to. I actually made a fake one just to basically watch Facebook videos on the nationalist uprising and potentially control.
See me moving the mouse here?
Yeah.
I love what you did just down here.
Oh. What's that, Matty? What have you done to him? That's just really immature, Matty.
The Captain Incontinency strikes again. That's beautiful.
Keep reading, short bus.
They're small.
No, it keeps going. It just keeps on going. It's fantastic. I love it.
Stop.
You derided me for name calling while calling me names as only somebody trying to prove he's an idiot could.
I'm going to explain this in only the way that someone as dumb as Peter Grace could understand it. You started it. Happy to have a conversation based on facts, reason, and evidence. But when the first thing that you say is, "Oh, you're an idiot," what did you expect would happen?
What did you expect?
You think I'm just going to turn around and say, well, I guess it's time to have an intellectual discussion with this little pygmy. Goodness, great. He's so deluded. It's like, what? Maybe because conservatives in the past might have actually come back with intellectual arguments. No, I'm not going to bother with arguments. Yeah. You're on the far left. You're out. I don't give a crap about what you have to say. If you want to come and have a real discussion about real things, that's why I put it in. Notice how there's nowhere in this entire rant does he acknowledge the fact that I invited him to come and have a real discussion about an issue. Yeah. Not once does he do that because he's a coward.
It's not very nice thing to say about chickens, Matty.
The communist chicken.
Chickens are pretty damn brave. I'm scared of them anyway.
Anyway. So he gives me. Hold up, short bus. We'll skip the rest of that rubbish. So anyway, let's have a look at the last one. Could you read the last one for us, short bus?
Okay, but my throat's starting to hurt. You allege that I think it's not okay to be white. Again, that's because you're an idiot. Who said it's not okay to be white? I didn't. If I say you're a dickhead for wearing an "it's okay to be white" shirt, that doesn't mean I don't think it's okay to be white. It means I think you're a dickhead.
Hey, is he cucking? Is he actually saying it's okay to be white?
He said it's okay to be white.
He's our guy.
Yeah, wow. Maybe
Peter
Patriot is suddenly, he's an ethnic nationalist.
We should report him to Facebook for standards.
Tell Antifa. Tell Antifa. This is what he looks like. This is what he looked like when he still actually had a decent job in radio back in the 80s before his career failed. I wonder if he would think someone was a dickhead for wearing a T-shirt that said it was okay to be black.
I'm sure if he finds the courage to speak to you face to face,
we can ask him that question. Yeah. But that's the thing. It's the whole point of "It's okay to be white" meme is to show how triggered and hypocritical people are when discussing it. Why is someone a dickhead for wearing a T-shirt that says it's okay to be white?
Yeah.
Why? I don't understand what's so bad about that.
That actually belies what he's trying to argue.
I know.
Yeah.
He's not a very smart radio presenter. It's probably why he never got a job on Triple M or another real job.
Oh, really? I thought that.
Maybe he was on. I think he was like a co-host once or twice.
Yeah. No, you're saying, Bradley?
It's about symbolism, isn't it? It's like, if you signal that you're, favourable toward white people, then you're automatically a bad person to the progressive left. So, yeah, I think that's what it's about.
And, okay, short bus. Let's read the rest of it.
Your adolescent, is that what it says? Adolescent enthusiasm for what you seem to think.
Are we adolescent or are we juvenile?
I don't know. I don't know.
What's the difference?
Keep reading, short bus.
For what you seem to think are cheeky cliches that were worn out before you got hold of them reflects a limited imagination as much as a lack of originality.
Not as bad as a lack of commas. Wow. What a sentence.
Jeez, you were going blue there, Sean.
I know. Poor guy's got to tell him to take a breath. He's having trouble there. What you seem to think are cheeky cliches that were worn out before you got hold of them reflects. How is calling him petarded a cliche? I thought I actually came up with that myself. I think he's just a little bit triggered, if you ask me.
So. I think he's really upset.
Really upset. He's just throwing it all.
I hope he makes another video.
I don't know. He will. Maybe.
He will. Yeah, we could keep this going.
We could keep this going. Yeah. We could. And now that we know who he is, it's even more fun.
It's just beautiful. He told us. He told us.
Anyway. Keep going, short bus.
Do I have to? I'm bored.
Come on, you're nearly done.
Doesn't really matter if you're a fake authentic or an authentic fake. You're never going to get any further than the walls of your own tiny bubble while blaming the rest of your world for your failure.
Isn't that projection?
He sounds like a socialist right there.
I know. I spent 42 years, as he so painfully told me. He said he was 42 years in the radio industry. He told me, yet he heard of me before I heard of him.
I'd love to just make the little video of his life, like the movie of his life.
Anyway, short bus, you can go to bed now.
Thank God. Gee, this is annoying as hell.
Thanks, short bus. That was great.
Thanks, Dave. You're all right. But he sucks.
Yeah, tell me about it. He's in the 3CR,
whatever it is,
radio room, and he's got that. Every now and then he looks back at the rejection letter from Triple M or something like that.
I don't know. I almost feel pity for the guy. Well, I do feel a little bit of pity, but then again, it's just too much funny.
Yeah,
it's just hilarious. Just the way that he reacted with that. I'm so happy that he spent the time to write that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's why we should. Let's keep this going because it's beautiful.
It's fun. It's good content, isn't it?
It's content for weeks.
But he won't. Some people have said that I've been on the gear tonight. No, I haven't been on the gear at all tonight. At all. No, I'm totally clean, man.
No, yeah, that's genuinely how Short Bus talks.
That is just how Short Bus talks. Seriously. And he's not going to be appreciative if I tell him that you think he's actually on the drugs, because Short Bus does not do that kind of thing. Yeah, he's a good boy.
He's not allowed to.
He's not allowed to. He's too young. Yeah. He's too adolescent, or is it juvenile? I don't know. What do you think of that, Brad?
Yeah, no, it's all good fun if that's what amuses you and keeps you entertained and challenges your intellect, then all well and good. I
think it's great, and he's done you should watch his videos every now and then. I don't really care that much. It's just that someone shared a video of his once that I was in, and I thought, I could actually make content out of this.
Yeah.
And that was really all I thought about it. And then I thought, maybe I could start trolling him a little bit, because I'm a bit of a troll, I guess, on occasions. And it was good fun. Like, I got some good reactions out of him and some of his followers. Like, his followers are real nut jobs. It's hilarious. And they get real angry. Like, they get really abusive too, which is funny. So you do the GIFs, like you respond with GIFs. I responded to one to Pete that was like, wrong, the Donald Trump.
Other GIFs, yeah. Like, they're all just going, oh, yeah, he's an idiot. Yeah, he's an idiot. Yeah, he's an idiot. He's an idiot. Yeah. I just love the fact that they're talking about us.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not calling us the giggling white supremacist anymore. He's just calling us the giggling racist.
The giggling racist.
Yeah, the giggling racist. I
gave him the perfect line, the raucous rake. The raucous rake.
You're going to have to find another one, mate. Potato Pete, here to save the day from the giggling racist.
Yeah, we'll just keep it going.
If he wants to keep going. I'd much rather, I can't bring him on the show because he'll probably say something ridiculous and get the video flagged. But what I'd love to do is have a Skype conversation with him. And that's a more neutral platform as well.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Bring him on. It'd be amazing.
Apparently, like, Australian Meditations is in the chat, and good old Potato Pete calls him Australian Medications. I think that's a pretty cool nickname, actually. I thought, I was like, yeah, that's all right. Australian Medications. he's medicated. You're a chilled out bro, aren't you, Matty? Oh, man. Sorry, I'm just having a look at the chat. Anything you want to say before we finish up there, Brad?
I just wanted to thank you very much for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it. I'd love to do it again at some point. And I guess I just want to say, any nationalist-minded people out there listening, please join the Australian Protectionist Party, because we are about trying to offer a real nationalist alternative for Australia, and we've been at it for a while, and we'll continue to keep plugging away and offering a real, I think, better way of doing things for Australia.
Fantastic, mate. Thanks so much for joining us. It was good to hear your take on everything. I hope you weren't too annoyed by us letting Short Bus invade the live stream for a little while.
No, not at all. It helped to mix things up and give a bit of humour. So, great stuff. Really enjoyed it, gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. Best of luck with the going aheads of the future. Make sure you're submitting a lot of articles to XYZ. As for the chat, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you're telling people about the channel. Apparently someone was having trouble finding it in search. What that means is you need to subscribe, and you do need to click the bell so that you get notified when the live stream starts. Oh, sorry, someone's actually asked you, just a really quick one, what's your stance on gun rights, on firearm usage?
We basically have a fairly liberal sort of policy on firearms. We do have a policy on firearms that's actually on our party website. It's sort of, very much, as many conservative-minded parties have, we sort of, support a basic right to bear arms, sort of thing, as long as, there's sensible background checks and that sort of thing. I think it's a fairly...
Do you believe in our right to own a tank?
To own a tank?
Yeah.
Maybe in certain circumstances.
You got to defend our right to own a tank. Fraser Anning defends our right to own a tank.
Yeah, no, this sounds like a good idea.
Fantastic. Good old Fraser Anning. Always good for tank owners or wannabe tank owners. We can't afford them just yet.
We'll have to put the Thug Life sunglasses on the APP logo. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Tell everyone, where can they find you? Where's the best place to find you? I have linked all the social media that you sent to me in the description, but just let the people know where the best way they can find you, or if they want to get in touch.
Yep, our website is www.protectionist.net, and we are on Facebook and we are on Twitter at Australian Protectionist Party. I'm sure you'll find us if you look.
Fantastic. Everyone else, thank you so much for joining us. Again, don't forget to click the subscribe button and the bell so that you get notified when we are going live. YouTube are not going to help us grow, so please tell people. You need to use your word of mouth to say, check out this amazing live stream. Check this webcast out where they talk all the issues in a fun, lighthearted manner and a serious manner on occasions. Check out XYZ Live or XYZ the website, link in the description as well. Check out my channel if you haven't already, Matty's Modern Life. There is always a link in the description, I believe, or you can just go check on this channel and it's one of the featured channels. Thank you so much again for joining us. If you watched us all the way through, you are truly amaze balls, and we'll see ya when we see ya.